Hi, my name is Robert Chelle with Chelle Law, and I'm an attorney that assists nurse practitioners with employment contract and independent contractor agreement issues. Today I'm going to talk about nurse practitioner independent contractor agreements. So, what are some things to think about if you're about to sign an independent contractor agreement? What are some red flag areas that you want to make certain you're protected from as far as the language in the contract? And then some of the differences between the two positions. So just on a base level, the main difference between being an employee and an independent contractor is at the end of the year as an employee, you get a W-2. Taxes are taken out of your compensation throughout the year. Normally you'd receive benefits. Whereas as an independent contractor, you generally will not get benefits. Maybe they'll pay for your malpractice insurance, but that might be it. And then no taxes are taken out of your compensation. You'll get a 1099 at the end of the year, and then you'll be responsible for having to pay, the federal government or the state for whatever taxes that you owe to them. Now, the point of an independent contractor agreement, at least in theory, is that it's usually for short-term employment or, kind of infrequent. So maybe you're working somewhere once a week or a few times a month or, something like that. That's when it would come into play. But there's a 20-factor IRS test, and it's, do they have control over where you're practicing, the patients you're seeing, what your exact schedule is, are they providing you with everything, admin, EMR, staffing, all that kind of stuff. How much control basically do they have over you? And so many times an employer will want to classify a nurse practitioner as an independent contractor when their actual, in reality, job duties don't fit the model. And the reason why they do that is to get out of having to pay employment tax. If you're an employee, the employer has to pay employment tax on any of your compensation. This is state kind of specific, but normally somewhere between 8 to 12% of whatever your compensation is they have to pay. And so they don't, they want to save some money. And so they will misclassify the nurse practitioner as an independent contractor when in reality, their duties are that of a, employee. So how do you handle that? Well, you want to be absolutely certain that there's not language in your contract that states if for whatever reason the state or the federal government determines that you've been misclassified, that you are the one responsible for any of those, fines, fees, back taxes, any of that kind of stuff. And so there are some organizations that will put language in, specific language that says in that scenario, the nurse practitioner is responsible for paying all of those penalties and back taxes. And that's just simply not fair. You absolutely cannot agree to that. In fact, there should be language that says the opposite, that if you are reclassified as an employee, if you're an independent contractor, that you are not going to be responsible for any of those things. I mean, 99 times out of 100, you don't have a choice of which way you're being classified. The organization is the one doing that. And so it shouldn't, it's just not fair that they would decide to classify you as an independent contractor. And then if you were reclassified, that you're responsible for all of those fees and costs and penalties. So that's one thing you need to be absolutely certain of. Now, as I said before, if you're an independent contractor, like a true independent contractor, the only thing the employer will generally provide, and this does vary, is malpractice insurance. They're not going to pay health, vision, dental, life, disability, retirement, aren't going to pay for your, nursing board license, DEA registration, usually won't contribute anything to continuing education. Like, you are truly on your own with providing many of those things. Many nurse practitioners will create an LLC of some sort, get a federal, tax ID number, get a bank account, and then run all of their comp through that bank account. And then they can obviously deduct all of the, fees associated with practicing, since the organization you're working for isn't going to do that. I would suggest, setting things up with an accountant and making certain that you're maximizing, the fact that you are an independent contractor, if that's what you truly, kind of your duties are in that scenario. That's, I guess, a little bit about the differences between being a W-2 and a 1099. If you have any questions about an independent contractor agreement or an employment agreement for that matter, feel free to contact my law firm. Our information is listed below in the description. And I appreciate you watching the video. All right, thanks. Take care.